3, 2, 1, go!
Hey folks, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today, we are looking at an anime film called Maquia, When the Promised Flower Blooms. In case you guys can see it, hopefully the light's not too bad. But that's it right there. So, I heard nothing but good things about that movie. I came out in the movie theaters, I want to say last year, and I unfortunately wasn't able to see it. I really just had no time to do so. I was able to see a lot of anime films and movies, unfortunately. But the thing was that I did want to see this one because I heard a lot of good things about it prior to when it started releasing and stuff like that. So I had a lot of high hopes for it. It's done by 11 Arts and also PA Works, which you could tell definitely from the animation because it's got that PA Works animation style to it. But it was a movie that has been so well received that for the most part, when Crunchyroll Awards came around and Maquia wasn't put onto the list of potential, nominees, people got very mad. It was a lot of rage from people, I noticed. And even Crunchyroll, I think, made a statement about how they felt, Maquia got kind of shafted in many ways. I don't know why they per se did that. I've heard mixed things, but I don't think anyone has a definitive answer. I've heard some people say various things, like, oh, it wasn't published enough, or excuse me, it wasn't advertised enough and stuff like that. But I don't think that's enough of a reason not to put something on nomination. I feel that there's some kind of secretive thing to that, where maybe it just wasn't included because not enough people of the judges saw it. Maybe not enough people in general really praised it. That has nothing to do with per se advertisement. That just has lack of viewership in general. But I have a lot of things to say about Maquia When the Promised Flower Blooms. And by the way, I'm just going to call it Maquia because it's a very long name for a movie. But I have a lot of things to say. Mostly, I will say good things about it, because there are a lot of good things I could say about it. I do have some negatives to say about it. I don't think I'll say this right now, I don't think this is the perfect anime film. I really don't. I think it's very good. I will definitely give it that. It's a very, very good movie. The beginning and end are where this movie shines brightest. The middle is where it suffers a little bit. But I will go into each part of it. Let me first start with the synopsis, though, to give you guys a kind of idea in case you've never heard of Maquia, because I know some people are like, wait, what's Maquia? Especially when the Crunchyroll Awards announced it in the first place, there were a lot of people that going, wait, what is this? I've never heard of that. And from there, then they started looking things up, but even then, some of them were just kind of oblivious to it. So, Maquia deals with the story of a kind of two groups of people. We have this one nation who's a kingdom that they're basically like any other kingdom. I forgot the exact name for them, but they're very well known for having these wyverns that are basically the symbol of them, their power. And then you have the Eorf, where the Eorf are these blonde-haired people who never age beyond teenage years. So, for example, besides the main character Maquia, who's 16, I think when the series starts, 15 or 16, you have the Elder, who looks like she's only 16 herself, but she's actually 400 years old, which you find out in the middle part of the story. And you have other people there that are in their 30s, 40s, and they still look like they're 15 or 14 years old at best. So this kingdom obviously wants that, that never-ending fountain of youth. So they decide to attack them, invade them. They take the women from the group. They try to kill off the men. And this is where the story begins, because Maquia ends up kind of caught in the middle, where she ends up escaping, but at the same token is then forced to flee from her country. And at the same time, she ends up finding a young boy who has just been part of like a traveling group, who his whole family's been obliterated, so he's a little baby, and she takes him on as her own child and calls him Ariel. The main part of the whole story is the focus between these two's relationship and how it kind of changes as time goes by. We have this very interesting, almost Wolf Children's type of theme where, it's a young woman trying to raise a family of her own, but a young woman that is basically a kid. By definition, I know she's a teenager, but is of the mindset of a kid, now having to raise a child, having to go to work at night, having to take care of him, having to help him when he gets sick, or help him when he's struggling with his adolescence as he gets older, because he's a human child. He's not of the Eorf, so he ages progressively in the series. And it's where I want to say Maquia's biggest strength is right there. It's the relationship between these two, especially the beginning. It's what hooks you the best. You see Maquia, you see Ariel, and they just have this great dynamic to one another, because you can see that the kid loves her, and there's a I want to say almost like two kids are hanging out, but also at the same time a young woman trying to be a little bit older than she is, trying to raise this child, trying to, you know, teach him things that he needs to advance in the world. But it's a very interesting way because you don't see that too often in anime. I've never really seen that in any anime film to my knowledge. Wolf Trilogy has the concept of it, but it's the same thing. And I've seen other movies that come close to it, but this is a very interesting take because you have basically an orphan being raised by a orphan child herself, if you think about it. And, you know, the first part, like I'm going to say roughly first 30, 40 minutes of Maquia is probably one of the biggest parts of it. It's, you know, you see the Ariel raise up, you see him get older and older as time goes by, and it works really well for this story. Where Maquia's story kind of falls apart for me and I think starts weakening a little bit is the middle part. And I'm not going to say it weakens the whole movie because then the end part gets really good and actually has a lot of emotional hits that really just hit you hard. I mean, like, I almost cried at the end. It was close. I didn't cry, so it didn't give me that emotional punch that I was hoping for, but it gave me very close. I'll tell you that right now. But the thing is that the middle part is where they start rushing things a little bit. Maquia's story starts going a little bit almost on a fast forward. You start seeing Ariel grow up, obviously. He starts going from, like, I want to say almost like 13, and then he's like 16, and then he's like almost 20 years old. And I get why they did that. You know, I get that the whole concept is now he realizes because they tell him at one point that, oh, you know, this is not your mother. And that's not really a big spoiler. It's just something that's kind of obvious. You knew that was going to happen eventually. But I won't spoil everything else because there's a lot of other parts that I will stay away from entirely. So like I put in the description, it's a spoiler-free review. I'm not going to do that to you guys. But, you know, they start doing this thing where they start skipping a lot. And it starts being where you start seeing Ariel obviously having his adolescence, you know, his teenage rebellious years where he starts raging that, you know, his mother is not really his mother. He starts having like almost kind of pseudo feelings for her. And it's never really creepy. I think it has almost this one moment that could have been a little creepy when he says a certain line that I'm not going to say what line it is, but it's a little strange wording wise. But it's this thing where they start getting this relationship where you almost think that he's in love with her, you know, like beyond mother and son. You know, starts getting a little bit of a relationship with her. It never goes, like, I want to point this out because I know a lot of people will probably go start writing the comments where it's not true. It doesn't go into incestuous concepts. I don't want to say that. It just starts having this thing because, again, they're not related by blood. I mean, this is a young man who is raised up by a teenager herself. So he's starting to get into this thing where he can't see her as his mother, which, I mean, makes sense. It's like, imagine if your mom was a teenager with you as a teenager. That'd be strange. There's cases of where kids are raising up kids, but your parent, you know, even if they start off like when they're 16 years old and they raise you as a kid, they're still going to be in their 20s when at least you start getting to your, you know, your teenage years. So it never is this thing where you're looking at someone that's your own age. So it doesn't ever present that awkwardness because, like, that's not a real thing. In Maquia, you have Maquia again being someone that doesn't age, raising a teenager. So she's a teenager raising another teenager. It makes it where, you know, there's the conflicting feelings because he's like, do I call her mother? Do I feel like she's my mother? What do I feel from her? He realizes at one point that she's struggling to raise him. She has to work 10 times harder. She has to, you know, go do jobs that she really can't per se do like nonstop without taking a toll on her physically. But she's doing this because she really loves Ariel, and that's clear as day. And he understands it, but he feels like it's not something that it works in his mindset because it just doesn't make sense. You know, it's like, this is a teenager. You know, he's the man. He wants to be the one that protects her ultimately, and that's one of the big kind of concepts for him as the story progresses. Is he wants to protect, you know, Maquia himself. Now, without spoiling things, you know, there's a big war that happens. There's a big incident that happens. That's where the middle part kind of gets to this climax issue. Various people reunite with one another. A lot of the Eorf that were basically taken in the beginning start meeting up with Maquia and other ones at one point. I'll be honest with you, none of that actually matters. Like, it has elements to it that are intriguing enough for you to be hooked by it, but ultimately you don't care about any of these people. At least I didn't personally care about any other character except for Maquia and Ariel. Those two took the reign of the whole thing. There's other characters that introduced. You know, you have the one of the other Eorfs that's ironically someone that made fun of Maquia for being very childish because she was always afraid to do this or that. You know, she ends up becoming very stoic because of her situation where she's kidnapped basically by this other kingdom and then forced to raise a child of her own. But it's not something you ever care about, and I think it's almost Ironically, because the whole story is about weaving. There's like this whole concept where the UF are like master weavers. They weave all these giant banners and stuff like that. It almost has this thing where it weaves this story together, and it doesn't feel like it really works together too well. Like Maquia's story and Ariel's story works perfectly. The unison is great. Their dynamics great. Other characters feel like they're just tacked in. It feels like the story tries to throw in these other incidents to kind of further along the story and make sure that you're not focusing just on Ariel and Maki, especially when there's a time where they're not always together, which obviously makes sense when the war incident happens and where he's older. So the middle part for me is a little weak, and with the whole fast forwarding thing that they start doing, where it starts skipping giant portions of it to kind of just throw in story elements, you start seeing him go from his teenage years to like young adult years and stuff like that. It's a little too fast. I think they really could have slowed it down a little bit, especially how they did the dynamics so perfectly in the beginning. They start skipping things to just further along the story quickly, like almost they're realizing the time would be running out if they didn't do it otherwise. I get it. It just doesn't really make the story stronger. It makes it a little weaker. And that's why also I don't care about any of those other characters. I wanted to see more of Ariel and Maquia. I wanted to see where their relationship goes. I wanted to see them deal with this whole thing of, this is not his mother per se, but she's always been a mother to him, By the end, and this is where Maquia pulls back and goes, we're going to deliver that punch you need for the greatest part of it. You get what you've been hoping for from the beginning of the story. You get, more Ariel, you get more Maquia, you also get some other relationships that start advancing. And it does a really great job of just throwing these emotional punches at you left and right, where you start feeling, oh my god, you want to almost cry when you see Maquia and Ariel now very old and stuff like that. Which, I mean, it's, again, this is not a spoiler. This is why I'm not, I'm saying this in the first place. Ariel is going to be destined to be older. It's something that you get from the beginning of the movie. As you see him advancing beyond her, you realize, oh, he's going to get older than her. Eventually, he's going to be surpassing her as an adult. But to see it and to have Maki's reactions to it and have her reminisce about the times that she was with him and all this other stuff as he's now an older person, it's very well done. It's very well done. And what's really cool is how the movie ends on this it's her story continues. Maquia is again a being that doesn't die anytime soon, so she's forced to always live while others around her die, and you almost feel horrible for her because of that. It's like she gets to all these great relationships, but is forced to watch them eventually die. And it does make you almost feel like you want to cry a little bit. But yeah, Makia's story really didn't make me cry. And it came close. I won't lie, it came close. But didn't hit me where I really wanted it to hit me. And it came very close at one point with the very end. But it is what it is. Here's what I say though. First and foremost, story, very well done. Had the weakness part of being the middle of the story, but everything else worked out really well done. I love the characters. I love the whole concept. I love the plotting of it. It worked in that sense. Again, fast forward a little too much in the middle part, and I felt like they focused on some characters that really didn't ultimately matter in the long run, but it did a great job. Animation, PA Works. Come on, PA Works is always doing an amazing job with their animation. I love the character models. I love the art. I love the background. I think the scenery is what really took the cake for the whole thing, because it looked freaking awesome. Some of the backdrops are awesome. And that last, I don't want to say second to last scene, but the second to last major scene of the movie was so nice to see. It was so perfectly animated. I loved it. In terms of voice acting, sound, and all that, I really love the music for Maquia. It had some really, really great tones. It knew when to play music to hit you when it needed to hit you. I think every scene worked because of the music accompanying it. I almost thought in my head, what if you had this muted at one point and you just had them talking? I feel like it would actually be lesser. So they did a great job. Because listen, there's some anime films, even anime series in general, that put the wrong type of music in that spot that should be not there. It's like, you could use this song somewhere else, or you could use this music somewhere else, and then just kind of throw in the wrong time, and it doesn't really fit or jive with the whole story. So it makes that one scene or that one event kind of lose its luster because of that. Now with Maquia, it does it from beginning to end. It has some great music, has a great soundtrack. I love the soundtrack for it. Voice acting, I listened to mainly in English. I did start off in Japanese because I wanted to hear the Japanese voice actors and actresses. Both are good. I think that, the sub works a little bit better because I think some of the characters have a little bit more emotional impact. But here's the thing. I will say the dub works if you think of it in the sense that if you want to make it a more fantasy-based, I want to say fantasy-based show, it works a little bit better because it fits this almost more Americanized concept to a certain degree, but it's still a better thing to watch in sub, obviously. But I do like the dub for it. It does really a great job with the dub. So overall, Maquia, the promised flower of blooms, is not perfect. It's really not. I think that if it would have been in the awards, probably would have won at least animation, maybe animation if it would have had its own category for movies. I really think they should have had a movie category, but it is what it is. But the thing is that I really did like it. I liked it a lot. So that's why if I had to rate it between an A through F, I'm going to give Maquia When the Promised Flower Blooms an A-. I was very close to giving it a B+ originally, but the ending was what really pulled me back from that to give it an A-. I really think it's a great movie. I think many of you guys will enjoy it. Again, middle part's the weakest element to it, but it's not even that bad to the point that I'm not going to say, oh, it's going to ruin the movie for you. It won't ruin it. It does, like, hinder, I want to say, the advancement of certain things because you don't want to care about anyone else but Maquia and Ariel, but it still does a great job. Anyways, did you guys see Maquia When the Promised Flower Blooms? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from what you guys thought about it. If you guys have different opinions, feel free to tell me. You know, some of you guys might love this movie more. Some of you might think it's not that great. Tell me in the comments below. I would really like to hear it. Guys, make sure to share the video. You know, make sure to like the video. Check out my Patreon if you want for various rewards that I have. I really don't care about Patreon too much, but it does help me a little bit. You know, it just shows that my channel's not completely dead yet. I actually am surprised that I'm only, like, I think 60 subs away from 2,000 subscribers, which is awesome. If you guys can help me get to that, I will swear I'll try to make videos more often. I really, unfortunately, don't have time to make a lot of videos, but I try my best to at least make them several times a month, which I think is good enough. And anyways, with that being said, guys, God bless you all. Until I pass across again in the next review, have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.